everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we're the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are. And it's episode 102.
That's right. More importantly, it's the episode after we've gotten back from RetroWorld Expo. We were very busy last weekend going through RetroWorld Expo, which was a really great, fun time that we're going to spend this entire episode talking about. So hold on to your seats because we're going to talk about our experience at RetroWorld Expo. This is a follow-up to our episode 99 where we talked about going to RetroWorld Expo.
We did a pre-pod. Now it's post-pod.
A shout out to Lance and Chris over at the RetroWorld Expo team for throwing a great expo.
Yeah, they did a great job organizing, as well as all the other volunteers.
Yeah, as well as everybody
members.
else who worked there. We've only talked to Lance and Chris, so those are the only guys that we know. But thanks for throwing a great expo. And once again, we'll get into it after we talk about games that we've recently been playing.
That's right. Yeah.
So Zach, do you want to go first?
Sure. Recently, I've actually been playing a game that I kind of picked up at RetroWorld Expo. So I picked up a couple of Game Boy multi-carts. A multi-cart is a pretty much always bootleg cartridge that contains multiple games. I picked up a couple of bootleg multi-carts, 2 Game Boy ones, a Famicom one, and 2 DS ones. The DS ones don't work, but they looked cool, so I grabbed them. But the Game Boy one I've actually been kind of popping in and playing every now and then, and a game I've been playing on it is The Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man was a game that originally came out in 1990. It was developed by Rare and published by LJN. LJN is kind of a notorious developer and publisher. They created a lot of licensed games for various consoles, and a lot of the games they made are bad. This game is also, I don't know, it wasn't bad. It's just, it's very, very simple. It is a Game Boy game, but in it you play as Spider-Man, and it's kind of like a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you're just kind of walking and punching bad guys who come at you, and you can shoot web at them. So there is a web functionality, though it requires you to hold the B button to shoot a like blast of web. It's not like a stream of web. You shoot like almost like a bullet of web, and if you double jump, you'll swing. However, don't recommend swinging because when I started swinging, I got like bombarded by enemies who were like popping out of windows and trying to hit me with baseball bats. So that was awful. And the first level at least ends with you fighting Mysterio, and he's tough. He'll turn into like fog and he'll like bounce around the screen, and when the fog hits you, it just like multiplies damage. You get essentially stun locked, and it just like damage, and then you die. it's really annoying. But it was just one of the games I wanted to try out on the multi-cart that I found. It's actually on both multi-carts that I have. I got this yellow multi-cart. I'll post a picture, or I already did post a picture of this on Instagram, so you can check out our Instagram. But there's a yellow one called 104 in 1. It says full color Sam GB collection. I don't know what Sam means, but it says Sam on here. And then the other one is this gray cart, and it says 27 in 1 on this really faded label. And you can just kind of make out the label itself, which has a list of the 27 games with their English names and then the Chinese names. So it's the name written in Chinese. Though I'm pretty sure some of these English names are wrong, but in any case, I have these multi-carts now, and they do work nicely in an original Game Boy, and they should work in like a Game Boy player and stuff like that. So kind of a cheap way to play multiple games if you want on the go.
That may or may not work.
Yeah. Well, the DS ones, I decided I wanted to do a little investigative work to see why they might not be working. So I popped one open, and it was very corroded on the inside. So I'm thinking that might be why it doesn't work. I cleaned it, and I stuck it back into my DS, and it did load a menu, but it looks like the file system is corrupted now. So I don't know what that's all about. The other one that I got doesn't fit properly in the DS card slot. Like, it fits, but it gets stuck, and it's definitely for DS. Like, it is a DS card. It's just thick. So I took it apart, and the reason it's thick is because there's literally a micro SD card hard soldered to the board on the inside, which is sketchy. Now, this micro SD card is a 2 GB micro SD card, and I'm pretty sure this cartridge says it contains 128 games on one cartridge. I am 99% certain that that number is a lie. It probably contains like 3 DS games and maybe a bunch of Nintendo like NES games to like fill up that space, or Game Boy games, using like an emulator or something to fill up that space. Maybe someday I'll try to like desolder that SD card and like run a virtual machine and stick it in there and see if it works, because I don't want to like, I don't know what's on there. I don't want to potentially like infect a computer. But so yeah, maybe I'll pop it in after I desolder it, and we'll take a look on the inside and see what games are hiding in the cart.
I've been recently playing Pool of Radiance, and not Pool of Radiance, the 2001 Ubisoft game. I've been playing the 1987 SSI Gold Box game. And we actually did talk about the Gold Box games back in episode 28 of Classic Gaming Brothers lore, where we talk about the publisher and developer SSI, Strategic Simulations Incorporated. So my recent time playing Pool of Radiance was ultimately very frustrating. So for a record, Pool of Radiance is a DOS-based video game and was very early DOS, as it came out in 1987. This game is just a little bit younger than I am, and the interface is tough to deal with in modern day gaming, to the point that when you want to move down in the menu, you don't push the up and down arrows, which would make the most sense. You push the home or the end key, depending on whether you want to go up or down.
That's gross.
Yeah. And then when you want to select things, you have to push the corresponding letter that's assigned to that key. So, for example, if I wanted to make my character, I may have to push like enter, home, enter, and then YN if I want to select things, yes or no. And then if I wanted to change like their body in their portrait, I might have to push B for body. And then if I wanted to change their head in their portrait, I might have to push H. And N for next, P for previous. So it kind of just play with the whole entire keyboard. But interestingly enough, the game eventually moves into first-person perspective, where the arrow keys control your movement. So I don't understand why in the menu you have to be driven by the home and end key, since the arrow keys work fine for other functions of the game. So I'm just going to regale you on my last time playing the game. I'm probably going to have to, unfortunately, restart it. So I spent a majority of my time creating characters. You have to create 6 different characters who are going to become your basis of your party. And this is 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons rules. You have a few smattering standard races: dwarf, halfling, humans, elves, half-elves, and then various classes: cleric, fighter, mage, magic user, or thief. And the non-humans can be multiple classes, and the humans, though, can get to be higher level than the non-humans. It's also very 1980s, as in like the recommendation is to have male fighters because males will be stronger. Like the females cannot gain a certain amount of strength. They have a penalty to their strength in the game, like built in. So if you want to have a fighter to optimize the game, you would want to have a male fighter. So I created a smattering of characters. I think I actually made a female half-elf fighter. I don't know. I had 3 fighters, a cleric, a mage, and a thief. And I went off into my adventure, where you start in the town of Fan or Flan.
Okay.
Yeah. And they give you a tour. What's great is the tour is like it drives you through the town. There's no map that I could find, but it literally just rides you through town. They're like, this is the temple. If you're injured, come here. And then you just run past the temple, and you're just like in first person perspective in this tiny little window, because there's like all of your other stats going on the other side of like around the screen. It's kind of like playing in a box. And the tour drives you through the town and then drops you off, and they're like, okay, you could go into the city hall and you can get commissions. So I was like, great. So I went into the city hall, and they're like, you don't have any awards to give you. I'm like, yeah, we just showed up. They're like, but here are some things that you could do. And I'm like, great. I went to the temple. And you enter into the temple, and the people who greet you are like, "Oh, do you need healing?" There's a yes or no. And if you say no, it says you must leave immediately. And then it just kicks you out of the temple. So you can't even like hang out. But in the city hall, so the walls and the doors look the same. And you can get turned around pretty easily, and you can head towards the wrong direction. And I did that. And I went to the direction where there is like the council chamber of the city guards. And they said, "You're not allowed here. Do you want to leave?" And you can either say yes or no. And I said yes a bunch of times. And then one of the times I said no. And they murdered me. All of the city guards just killed my entire party. I think we did fight one combat though before we got murdered by a bunch of people. But yeah, everyone died and I had to quit. And that was my time with Pool of Radiance. I spent 2.5 hours doing that, of which I would say a majority of that time was spent building the characters.
Nice.
To then immediately die by the town guards because I didn't leave the hallway. So, yeah, Pool of Radiance.
Pool of Radiance.
It's a fun game. You can get on GOG, good old games. But once again, just remember that the keys might not be something you are familiar with.
Yeah. So let's get into talking about RetroWorld Expo. So Seth and I spent a weekend down in Hartford, Connecticut, checking out RetroWorld Expo, which is a video game convention, as we've talked about a few times. It was a pretty fun time that we had.
That's right. We did, however, before we went to RetroWorld Expo, we went to some comic book shops on the way out. Because we may be retro gamers, video gamers, people who like the video game, but we also like comics.
We're also just nerds.
So we stopped by a couple of comic books and hobby stores, and we got some stuff. So we're going to talk about that briefly. We went to Wonderland Comics in Putnam, Connecticut.
Yeah, great place.
They're a really good comic book store if you're in the area. They're also worth a little bit of a drive. They are very clean and organized, and if you are looking for something, it's very easy to determine if they have it.
Yeah.
Everything is like clearly merchandise. They carry a lot of comics. They also have a large Dungeons and Dragons set. They also have some other miniature games. They have some action figures. They definitely have a spread of stuff, and they have board games. So if you're interested in any of those things, they're always worth a visit to see what they have. It's always very professionally merchandised and organized. There we got on their Instagram as they shared our journey going across to RetroWorld Expo, and I bought a comic. I bought Reptilian by Garth Ennis, which is a Batman comic.
Yeah.
And we also got coffee at the Chubby Dog,
located right next door,
which was delicious.
Yeah, and the Chubby Dog is really kind of a fitting place to go if you're on your way to Wonderland, because not only is it right next door, but it's also kind of a nerdy little coffee shop. They have a bunch of like Star Wars, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles memorabilia on the walls. There's a GameCube in the corner. It's just kind of a nerdy place to go, and you can definitely see, I think, the influence of being located next to a comic book store for these guys. But yeah, that was Wonderland Comics and Chubby Dog over in Putnam, Connecticut, and they're right on the main street, right in the center of town. After that, Seth and I took a little bit of a drive to Uncanny Collectibles in Danielson, Connecticut. Danielson's not super far from Putnam, and Uncanny Collectibles is a neat little comic video game like collectible shop. I mean, as the name implies, it kind of had a little bit of everything. It had a lot of comic books, it had a lot of video games, a lot of DVDs. There were some on-card Star Wars figures. There was some Funko Pops. There was posters and stuff. Just a whole kind of smorgasbord of items that you could find and buy if you wanted to. I actually picked up a couple of Sonic comics because I love Sonic comics and I'm a Sonic comic collector. So I picked up a couple that I was missing that I was interested in having in my collection. Issues 3 and 4. And I also picked up a copy of one of the super specials, which was a reprint of issue 50, which was kind of the big deal. They called it Endgame. And yes, they did it before Marvel did. Cool little comics to find, stuff that I was looking for, so it was nice to add those to my collection.
After we left Uncanny Collectibles, who also has a print shop business called Uncanny Creation. We then traveled onwards and we went to Manchester, Connecticut, and we stopped in at the Portal and also the Time Machine. The Portal is a more of a war game card shop, so you can buy your like collectible card games like Magic, or you can buy your like Star Wars figures for the Star Wars miniatures game. There was also like a lot of Warhammer is what the Portal primarily does as well. They have a big Warhammer community there. Though I bought some Reaper miniatures since I also paint figures, so I bought some Reaper miniatures, and then we poked around the Time Machine, which generally has scale model trains and like more modeling hobby stuff, which we didn't buy anything from there. And then we had our final stop.
Our final stop was a Heroes Legacy Comics and Collectibles located also in Manchester. The Heroes Legacy Comics and Collectibles was a tiny little comic book store, but tiny mostly just in terms of like square footage. The actual contents of the store, I say, were pretty, they had a good amount of stuff, I would say. They're also one of those stores that I thought was very well organized. You know, everything was easy to find. You know, I was looking for a certain thing, I found it right away, sort of deal. I picked up a couple of Amalgam comics, which I've been getting really into the Amalgam series. For those who don't know, back in like the 90s, Marvel and DC did a crossover where they had their characters fight, and then for like a period of time there was this thing called Amalgam, which was Marvel DC kind of merging. So there were characters like Spider-Boy, who is a combination of Ben Reilly, Spider-Man, and Superboy. There's also a version of Wonder Woman that's a combination of Storm and Wonder Woman. There's a version of Doctor Strange and Dr. Fate called Doctor Strange Fate, and you know, that sort of deal. It's kind of a combination of characters that kind of go together, which would make sense to kind of merge them, but it leads for some interesting storylines. So I picked up a few of those. I picked up a comic called Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I picked up a Spider-Boy comic, and I also picked up Lobo the Duck, a combination of Howard the Duck and Lobo, which is a very bizarre combination, but a combination nonetheless. And then we made our way down to Hartford, and we got checked into the hotel. We set up a retro pie so that we could play some video games.
Right.
And we had issues with the audio, but we eventually got it working. And then our father met up with us, and we went to Bear Smokehouse right up the street from the convention center, where we had some really delicious barbecue.
That's right. And we played NBA Jam, and I beat Zach. As I usually do.
Yes.
I am the superior NBA Jam player.
He's the NBA jammer.
Yeah, pretty much semi-professional. Now, to get to the fun part is we went to the convention on Saturday, or the Expo. I would say definitely RetroWorld Expo is more of an expo than a convention. There are far more dealers than like special guests. Like if you go to Rhode Island Comic Con, there's like a million special guests, but RetroWorld is really more for those who are collectors and like really into retro gaming.
And I think another thing is that where if you go to like a comic convention or a convention like Anime Boston, there are traditionally a lot of panels. And RetroWorld Expo, there are panels, but a lot of the panels are like meet and greets and stuff like that with some of the guests, which isn't a bad thing for sure. It's just something that I don't think Seth and I were really super after. You know, there were a couple of special guests we would have liked to have met, just get some time to talk to. We weren't really like dead set on like if we didn't talk to them, we were like brokenhearted sort of deal. So we weren't really in line for too many of the panels. Not that that's a problem. We kind of ended up spending just more time, I think, on the floor itself because there was a lot to see.
We were able to see both Possum House Games and Killer Gin. Both of these, I think we talked about in our Excited About Seeing episode. Possum House was really cool. They have a upcoming game called Pig Tank where you play as a pig in a tank. It's got some very interesting game mechanics involving like heat-seeking rockets, and like it's got a Metal Slug vibe to it for sure.
Yeah,
so your character's got a shotgun, then he also can or the pig can also get into the tank, and the character has the ability to shoot heat-seeking rockets. Well, they're like more like targeted rockets, and you can move the target so you can move the rockets in real time. It's like Metal Slug if it was a puzzler. There's like walls that you have to like open up, and you can only open them up with these rockets, and so you're like trying to maneuver these rockets around to get them through these walls. We played 2 levels, and not the tutorial, because I told Zach we don't play tutorials. We played the first level, which was very much a puzzler type level, and then a second level that was more of like a Metal Slug shoot 'em level, and it was a lot of fun. It was a good time. They were very nice people, and we may have them on the show, perhaps in an Indie Dev Lounge episode.
And we also got to meet the Killer Djinn team. When I was talking about the Killer Djinn back in our pre-convention pod, I alluded to, I think, their base game, which is just called the Killer Djinn, and it's like an RPG game that has some farming and like relationship elements similar to like Stardew Valley. However, what they were demoing was actually different. What they were demoing was Killer Djinn Battle Arcade, which looks like it takes the characters from their pre-existing game, Killer Djinn, and throws them all into like a battle royale 2D classic Mario style fighting game. So Seth and I got to sit down and we played that. We were actually just like walking past the booth, and it was like maybe an hour or so from when the first day was going to close, and the devs were sitting there and they said, "Hey, you want to play a game?" And we're like, "Yeah, we got nothing to do." So we sat down and we played a couple of rounds with them, and they were really good with showing us, how the game works, things you could do with it. They actually made fun of me because I picked, I guess, one of the worst characters in the game, but I still won a couple of rounds. But yeah, that was Killer Djinn Battle Arcade, which is available, I believe, on Steam now as a demo. Though certainly check them out and give it a try.
We were also joined at the expo with our friend, who is also a friend of the show, Jim, who is Evil Jim X on Twitch. He is a Twitch affiliate who we met up with, and we really just tackled the expo with him. He introduced us to a partner Twitch streamer, Slackinator, and a publisher by the name of 8-Bit Steve. 8-Bit Steve worked with Slackinator to write a series of guides called The Easy Way, where they are very descriptive guides on how to beat hard NES games, since both Slackinator and 8-Bit Steve are big NES guys, as is Evil Jim X. Though Evil Jim X is a big 3DO guy. 3DO is like Evil Jim's thing. So all of these guys definitely deserve a follow on Twitch, and they are far more active than we are. And we will be having Evil Jim X on the show to talk about the 3DO, which will be fun. And we will be looking to have Slackinator and 8-Bit Steve on to talk about some other things in the future. So it was really nice. We spent a lot of time talking with these guys. We hung out with Jim pretty much the entire show, and it was good to really see people in person again, which was a lot of fun.
Definitely give them a follow, give them a watch, and definitely check out Evil Jim's Twitch. He plays a lot of games like Time Cop, and I think he also does some kind of speed running as well. So certainly check him out. But yeah, we wandered around a bit pretty much on day one, kind of just looking around at things that we were interested in buying. We did pick up a couple of things off the bat. I ended up getting a couple of Tiger Electronics games, and
yeah, which ones did you get again?
So on Saturday I picked up Ninja Fighter by Tiger Electronics, which is I haven't really even tried it out yet, but it's like it looks kind of like a knockoff of like Ninja Gaiden. It's certainly something, but the real piece de resistance that I picked up is the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Tiger Electronics game from 1992, which is like I just love it. It has like the Sonic Hedgehog 2 artwork, and the level you play, I think it's supposed to be Oil Ocean. It's Tiger Electronics, so they're not like anything to write home about, but finding those at the convention was something that I was really happy. That was something that was kind of on my mental list for things I wanted to snag, was like Tiger Electronics games. I was like down to just buy like one of the more recent reproduction, I guess, style ones from Hasbro, but to find like original Tiger Electronics games from the 90s, I was like really excited. Besides stuff that we bought, though, I mean, Saturday I think was just mostly a day of like wandering around and checking things out. Our dad ended up joining us for part of the con, and we ended up going to lunch with him at a place called Banh Mi, and we hung out a lot with Jim. We also met a couple of different content creators that we kind of just ran into while walking around. So we got to see Only True Gamers, which is a podcast. setting up actually for doing like live recording at the convention. So we really didn't get to talk to them super long because they were like literally pulling their microphones out of their like suitcases and stuff when we showed up. And the other podcast that we did get to also talk to was Late to the Game, which is hosted by a YouTuber called Son of a Fitch, Fitch, and they were wicked nice. They chatted with us for a bit and they took our cards, and we were certainly happy to get to talk to them.
We also talked with the host of a YouTube series called Peg Warmers. We had a brief conversation with Metal Jesus, who was there.
He's Metal Jesus is a very busy guy. So Metal Jesus, if you're listening, don't worry. We weren't offended by the fact that you were in the middle of recording while we said hi. But he was walking around. He was actually filming, I assume, his video that's going to be up on his channel probably by this weekend. So who knows? If you look carefully, maybe you'll see two classic gaming brothers in the background.
So our chief meme poster is very much into the retro scene, but was unable to make it to RetroWorld Expo. So I went with a shopping list. I bought him a original Pokemon Yellow cartridge, since he is very much so into Pokemon right now. I also got him 2 PS1 memory cards, since his memory card is corrupted for his PlayStation. And I got him something from Tom Ryan's studio, which is something that he was not expecting, but it was a NES cartridge that said "Blow Me" on it. And what he would do is he would blow on the cartridge and it would be a mystery game when he plugged it into his NES. I don't actually think you need to blow on it. I think it's just a ROM dump on a NES cartridge.
I think it's a labelless. I think it was like a damaged cartridge that they just relabeled.
So yeah, that's Tom Ryan's studio. He's on Etsy, so if you want to purchase your own Blow Me cartridge, you can buy it and he'll ship it to your house. Shipping, I think, is out into the middle of November, it looks like. But in case you're looking for a Christmas present for somebody, he also does enamel pins and has some other art. And speaking of art, we also ran into Paul Simic, Simic, who does some cool like fantasy artwork. So I actually bought a D&D related shirt, which had like the dragon motif symbol on it, but instead of it being filled in, it was like a dungeon cross section, which is kind of cool. I always like any cross section. I'm just a sucker for. I walked over to his booth and I looked up and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna buy that. And we're glad that we ran into him. But he is you can go find his stuff at paulsimic.com for his store, and I believe he's also on Etsy.
Not too far from Paul Simic was actually another booth that we spent a little bit of time at, and that was Premium Edition. Premium Edition is a games publisher that they publish indie games for the Nintendo Switch. And Seth and I actually both picked up the same game from them, Pigeon Dev Game Collection, which is a collection of short indie games all done in a retro style. So there are 4 different games on the Pigeon Devs Collection cartridge. Awesome P, Awesome P2, P spelled PEA, like the vegetable, Bucket Knight, and Explosive Jake. And these come on a legit Switch cartridge in a beautiful Switch case that actually comes with its own NES-style slipcover that you can, slide it in and have it nicely displayed. One of the cooler things, though, is that each of their games come with a challenge card on the inside. So if you beat the challenge and prove that you have beaten the challenge and send them the proof, they'll actually send you a patch, like a patch that you can sew onto a jacket. So I think that's wicked cool. Such a great idea. We were really happy to meet them. Fun fact, one of the games on the collection uses music by Roll Music, who is the musician for this podcast. Seth actually was surprised to hear our theme playing in one of those games, which was funny. But that happens when you're using music that is Creative Commons. So
right.
I guess going over some of the other things that we bought, which we don't want to, we're going to probably put out something showing off some more of the stuff that we got. I also picked up some, speaking of Pokemon games, I picked up some like bootleg repro carts of the different Pokemon games.
What's a repro cart?
A repro cart is a reproduction cartridge, so a cartridge that has been recently made of a previously released game. Sometimes this is a game that is available in English, or it is available in the North American market, but has it's hard to find. This could also be a game that was only released in maybe the European or Japanese markets and maybe was translated into English by fans and then put onto a cartridge. This could also be like an unlicensed game that's getting kind of new life as a new cartridge. So that's usually what we refer to by as a reproduction or a repro cart. But these are 3 of the Pokemon games: Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Red, and Pokemon Gold. And I got these from a booth called TCG Oddities. Now, TCG Oddities is primarily a kind of a collector and a seller of misprint and error cards, miscuts, misaligns, blank fillers, beta prototypes, that sort of stuff. So they kind of specialize in oddities of collectibles, specifically trading cards and the Pokemon trading card games. So it was kind of fitting that they had a bunch of these reproduction cartridges for a really good price. I got 3 for $10. I thought that was a great deal because these games can run for a pretty penny these days, and I just want to be able to play them. I'm not really interested in the value of owning an original cartridge. As long as they work, that's fine with me. I don't mind owning a reproduction copy of a Pokemon game. Now, speaking of reproduction cartridges, though, I also picked up a game from Guerrilla Games, which is located up in Raymond, New Hampshire. Now, Guerrilla Games, they're just a regular retro video game store, but the owner also sells some reproduction cartridges, especially at conventions. I picked up a copy of Shin Megami Tensei If, which is a Japanese-only release RPG game, part of the Shin Megami Tensei series, which we did get here in America, and I don't think we've ever talked about, but this is a series of RPG games that are really popular, and they actually spinned off into the Persona series, which is also incredibly popular. And Shin Megami Tensei If is the like precursor to Persona. It's the game that essentially inspired Persona, and it's pretty much a high school version of the Shin Megami Tensei world, and that's where you get Persona from. And those are some of the like reproduction cartridges I got outside of the bootleg carts that I found, the multi carts, you could say.
So apart from the things that we already talked about that I bought, such as the game from Premium Edition and the t-shirt from Paul Simic, I also picked up a sealed limited edition of Black Sad, which is a game that I've talked about previously on both a Byway Pass and a recently played. It's a detective noir game. I picked it up for the Switch. It came with some postcards and the game itself and a lenticular image, so it's like a hologram of Black Sad himself. So that was nice. I picked that up. And then I found probably my 2 favorite finds.
Oh, I love these.
I think my finding experience was the best. So we were at a dealer booth that we already been to a couple of times. And it's actually the one we went with Evil Jim X. And Evil Jim was determining whether or not he needed to buy an N64, which he ultimately did. He wanted to buy an out-of-box N64. And while Zach and Evil Jim were looking at N64 cartridges and going back and forth about buying the N64, my eyes were kind of wandering around, and I saw tabletop board games and a gold box edition of Gateway to the Savage Frontier, which is a game by SSI similar to my recently played. So I went over, and they wanted a lot for the gold box Savage Frontier game, but behind it were these board games, and they had a Dungeons and Dragons board game by TSR, one of the original ones that were more designed about kind of like they were simplified and more kind of like a gateway to D&D type game, which I was not really interested in, but I saw in that stack a Dark Sun box, and I was racking my brain being like, is this Dark Sun the Shattered Lands? Like, is this the OG box? Like, that'd be awesome if I could find that. So I pulled out some of their board games that they had, and I pulled out Dark Sun, and I come to find that it is the original Dark Sun collection pen and paper for the campaign setting for second edition. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I own at home one of the modules for Dark Sun. So I was like, oh, this will be perfect. I could just put it all together as a nice little collection. I like old D&D materials, so I go out to collect them, but I also don't like to overpay. So this was $50, and online there were bids on it for 150, $200. So I was like, yeah, this is a good buy. And then on the way out, I was just going through because I thought if they had this box, they might have some other cool paper goods. And so they had a couple of bins underneath their tables that had like Nintendo Power magazines. And I just started going through them. And in them, I found an old X-Men look and find by the Look and Find books, licensed by Marvel Comics, copyrighted 1992. And it is beautiful. The artwork is just 90s X-Men. I love 90s X-Men styling. I think it's my ultimate like type of X-Men art that I like. So I bought that for $5. It was very exciting.
At the booth right next door, I actually picked up a couple other things that I was looking for. Specifically, I picked up a copy of Sonic 2 for the Sega Mega Drive. Now, I actually own 2 boxed copies of Sonic 2, apparently. I own a not for resale version and a standard retail version, but I didn't own a PAL copy, so I bought a PAL copy, the Mega Drive PAL copy. And it is CIB, complete in box. It is the box, the game, and the manual. And it's the European copy, so it's all in different languages. It's really, really cool, and I actually had been wanting either a PAL or Japanese NTSC copy of Sonic 2. So I found the PAL. Now I just need to get myself the Japanese copy, and then I'll have my Sonic the Hedgehog 2 various regions collection. Though I still need to find like the obscure ones, like the South Korean release and stuff. The 2 games that I am most happy I found was actually over back at Guerrilla Games. Back at the Guerrilla Games booth, I found, and I was really happy to find these, were the 2 games that I had been looking for when I got to RetroWorld Expo. You see, I got to RetroWorld Expo, and I had a goal in mind, and that was I wanted to find Joe Montana and Joe Montana 2, the 2 football games for the Sega Genesis that I have wanted, the only sports games I've ever been actively looking for. And that's because they are hilarious. Joe Montana and Joe Montana 2 are just 2 generic sports games, but the covers for them, these are 2 separate games, are near identical photos of Joe Montana tossing a football. And I think that is hilarious to me. I don't know why. I just really get a kick out of it. So I found them. They're in a bin of like it was like buy 4 for 20 or so, or buy 4 for 10, I think was something. It was something really like a really good deal at Guerrilla Games that they had. So I grabbed Joe Montana 2, and I actually bought Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood for PlayStation 3 along with it, just kind of round off that collection. 2 of the last things I ended up getting were Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Game Gear, just because I was missing it, and I would like to get a complete Game Gear collection someday of Sonic games, just Sonic games. Really, the other cool thing that I found, which was really just kind of a spontaneous grab for me, was Wacky World's Creative Studio for the Sega Genesis. Now, Wacky World's Creative Studio is this like Mario Paint knockoff, where like Mario Paint is like Mario themed and you get to draw and make music. Wacky World's Creative Studio is Sega themed, so it has like Sonic in it. It has Echo, the dolphin. And I actually own Wacky World's Creative Studio. I own a copy of this game already, but I wanted this copy because it was not only in the box with the manual, but it came with the Sega mouse, which is, I love obscure peripherals so much. And the Sega mouse to me is just one of those obscure, stupid peripherals. It's compatible with like 20 games officially for the system. And it's not even compatible with Dune, which is like, I thought it would be compatible with Dune Battle for Arrakis because that's an RTS. Nope, it's not compatible with Dune, the RTS game. I don't think it's even compatible with Hershog Sway, the other RTS game for the Sega. So whatever, I'm going to check out Wacky Worlds with the mouse, and I'm also going to download a couple of ROM hacks that make use of it.
And it was a pretty good price too. You get it for like $30?
Yeah, I got it for 30.
Yeah, so there are people that are selling just the mouse out of box for $40 to $70.
Yeah.
And the thing that you got, the complete in-box Wacky Worlds with the mouse, selling for $85.
Yeah, no, it was
a pretty good deal.
It was a great deal, and it was one of those things that I saw, and I was kind of hemming and hawing about it, and then I opened it and saw that mouse, and I was like, oh, I gotta get this. This is like a better deal than I thought it would be. So yeah,
maybe Santa Claus will bring you things so you can display your Joe Montana game.
Be still my heart.
Well, I think that's gonna be it for today's main part of the episode. We'll go into our buy weight pass segment. As you may know, we now do a different buy weight pass than we used to. We look up each other's games. We're not exactly sure how we're going to do a buy weight pass with a guest. We may go back to the old standard format, or we may try to sell the guest on an idea. We don't know. We'll talk to the guest and see how they want to do it. But it's also weird with 3 people. Anyway, we'll figure something out. But today I'm going to go over the game that I have for you, Zach. And first I'm going to tease the game. This game is an all new adventure, and this game is full of slaps where you will face many enemies and you will beat them up all with slaps. Are you interested?
I am interested in slaps.
You're interested in slaps.
What's this game called?
This game is called Asterisk Obelix Slaps the Ball. Now, we're going to cut away while Zach researches the game.
And we're back. So Seth provided me with the game Asterix and Obelix, Slap Them All, based on the French comic series Asterix and Obelix. We actually talked about Asterix and Obelix kind of recently. I talked about, because I was playing Asterix and Obelix and the Great Rescue for the Sega Genesis. Asterix and Obelix is this French comic series about a village in ancient Gaul, which is ancient France, and this village is defending itself from the Romans because they have a magic potion. Asterix and Obelix, Slap Them All, is a new game coming out by Mr. Nuts Studio and being published by Microids, and it looks kind of cool. It's got kind of I almost want to call it like a Cuphead style of animations. It almost looks like hand-drawn sprites. I don't know if it is, but it does have kind of a hand-drawn sprite aesthetic to it. So this game looks fun. I'm going to put it down as a wait just because historically Asterix and Obelix games have not done very well in the recent years. So I certainly want to give this the opportunity to be released and see how it's gonna fare. With the early reviews, but it's due out November 25th, so that's going to be a wait for me. So Seth, your game is also a beat 'em up. You're playing as brothers. You're playing as a close-knit family as you single-handedly take down a crime cartel pretty much by hand. Though you do have the assistance of a local cable reporter to help you out, and you guys climb into your van and you have to fight this criminal cartel.
What's the name of the game?
This game is called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge.
Oh, well, we're gonna only break momentarily. And we're back. I am very excited about this game coming out. It is like the reinvigoration of the arcade, which I was a big fan of. I'm a big fan of most beat-em-up arcade games, specifically the X-Men, Simpsons, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And not in that order, actually. X-Men, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then Simpsons. So, and this is like a modernization of this, and I've actually talked about this game with the friend of the show, Mike Case, who was on many, many years ago in episode 45, who is a toy collector and YouTuber, and also has a podcast called The Black Series Cantina. But we talked about this game at length because we were both excited about having this game coming out. So I'm very excited, and I will be putting this down as a buy.
Ooh.
And we will be probably talking about this game possibly in the near future.
Yeah, whenever it drops. I think it's currently like to be released soon. I don't know if it has a
well,
date.
we may have a special guest when we talk about this game. Look forwards to a future episode episode where we talk about this game, and we may have an additional voice on the podcast to help us talk about this game and be excited about it. But yeah, so definitely a buy on the good old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So that's going to be our show. So we did get some feedback in regards to our end segment, which is where we do our call to action, where we tell you about how to listen to us, support us, and contact us. So we wanted to speed things along, and you guys let us know if you want to go back to the standard lengthy one, but probably everyone will appreciate brevity. We're available on all podcasting apps, so go ahead, search for us. If you need a different way to listen to us, you can contact us by sending us an email to classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We also have a website, which is classicgamingbrothers.com. We have many socials. We have our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch are all at Classic Gaming Brothers, and our Twitter is CG Brothers Pod. Please give us a follow, a like, and ring all those bells. And you could support us by rating us on iTunes or whatever listening application you use. You can rate us, give us the heart, follow, comment. But ultimately, we just like having people listen to us. So that's how you can do those things. Is there anything else that I'm missing, Zach?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Zach.
And I've been Seth.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers. That's right.
I'm very excited about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.